So historically, I think for the clinician, there's a value triad of efficacy, toxicity, and cost. So the holy grail is, does the drug improve the quality of life, length of life of the patient? When drugs are equivalent in that regard, then which of the drugs is the safer or causing the less adverse events, the lower toxicity? And if that's equal, then it becomes a cost decision. What's been interesting as we look at the last year and we look at a class of drugs that have come out to treat a condition like hepatitis C, where we have a drug that is a once-a-day drug versus a combination of 7 pills in a day, and they're treated as if they're equivalent, a clinician would say they're highly not equivalent, even though they may treat the same condition and they may treat it to a similar efficacy. Clearly, that administration schedule makes it very different and they shouldn't be looked at the same. And yet, we saw them treated as if they were the same, and we saw PBMs make decisions on which drug based on cost only. That's a little bit unsettling for me because I don't see those as clinical equivalency as we start to think about the world of biosimilars and the world of PD-1 drugs that may have multiple agents coming out with very similar mechanism of action and similar data. So I'm not sure. Right now, I think that cost has become enough of an issue that there are stakeholders who are starting, in my mind, to I guess start to blend the lines or blur the lines of that value triad, which was fairly consistently upheld for the last 2 decades.
In this era of very rapid expansion, we have now a world in which there are multiple agents available for a given target, and the question of how a health plan might decide what's a covered benefit, what's not a covered benefit, is something that people ask about commonly. The fact of the matter is that as of today, they're all covered. If the FDA approves it, if the NCCN gives it its blessing, it is almost impossible for a health plan not to pay for it. So we'll just start with that. The concept that perhaps with evolution of insurance benefit design that we will somehow more aggressively manage our formulary, I think is not likely to happen in oncology. And I think the reason it's not likely to happen in oncology is because if you remember about a year ago or so, there was an attempt to limit the number of antidepressants, and people went bananas. Just think about what will happen in the oncology space if people try to do this. So I don't think that's very common. Now, I am a pathways guy, and I believe in clinical pathways as a way of driving value choices in management of patients. And I think the people who manage pathways will start thinking about applying their typical filters to what is in and not in pathways. And the typical filters, of course, are efficacy, toxicity, and cost of care. And there may be some filtration provided by the pathways. We have chosen in our company, in Aetna, we have chosen not to manage content, and therefore we partner with providers who build pathways. Other payers have chosen to build their own pathways, and I think they're going to be faced with being transparent about their process around efficacy, toxicity, and cost of care. But I think pathways do offer an alternative for approaching the formulary management question.